Hi, everyone. I'm Bruce Parker, real estate mentor, educator, licensed real estate broker, and director of Best School of Real Estate.
All right, so now we're going to use the cost approach. Where do we use the cost approach? Most often on a church, because a church doesn't have income and a church doesn't have many comparable sales. What about if you had a Frank Lloyd Wright architecturally significant building that you wanted to appraise? Probably use
And
the
now
cost
look at this.
approach. Probably use the cost approach. Another time that using a cost approach came to mind, as I told you, I still ride motorcycles. And one day I was riding my motorcycle just to reduce stress, and I went down to Washington Crossing Park. And I went to the Pennsylvania side um, by Washington Crossing Park because Washington crossed the Delaware and surprised the Hessians. And there was a house for sale, and big sign out front said, "This is a house that Washington had used as his headquarters." So how would you value that house? It couldn't be by comparable sales because there's not houses Washington used all over for sale that are still around. They're all gone. You wouldn't use income because it's not used for income. So cost approach was one of the ways that we would come up with a value for that house, or for a church, or for a historically significant building, or for a government building, because government buildings aren't supposed to have income either. So when we're going to do cost approach, the first thing that comes to mind is, are we going to do reproduction or replacement? Reproduction cost is the cost to reproduce an exact replica. So if you're looking at that house by Washington Crossing Park, if we were going to build that exact house, the ceilings were only 6.5 feet tall. I'm 6'4", and my head almost hit the ceiling. And the houses were built out of hand-hewn beams. And some of the places where they insulated with straw and mud. That's not current building techniques. But if you were going to build reproduction, you would come up with a value to produce an exact replica. If you're going to do replacement cost, you're going to find the cost to build that building in such a manner that it would be current materials and current building techniques. So you got to decide, you're going to do reproduction or replacement. George Washington's house that he slept there, you might do reproduction. Another house that maybe is just an older building, you might do replacement if it's not historically significant. So you're going to decide reproduction or replacement first of all. Next is you're going to have to consider depreciation, which is a loss in value due to any cause. So in the cost approach, it's best used for churches, government buildings, unique buildings, historically significant buildings. And we're going to have to calculate what our depreciation is. Now, here's what's really going on with the cost approach. We're looking at a building like that building that George Washington slept in, and we're going to build an imaginary building in our head that, if we're going to use replacement, that serves the same function as George Washington's building there. But George Washington's building has some things wrong with it. It's got some wear and tear. It's outdated or outmoded. It only has 6.5 foot ceilings and has straw for insulation. And it has things that are affecting its value that aren't really in the house, like it's real close to the Delaware River and the Delaware River floods. So we have some things that are outside the fault, let's say, of the house that affect its value. So depreciation, we're going to build an imaginary building, whether it's replacement or reproduction. We're going to subtract all the different types of depreciation. This isn't tax depreciation. This is loss in value. And it's called accrued depreciation. Accrued, A-C-C-R-U-E-D. And there's three things in accrued depreciation. First is physical deterioration. That's wear and tear and how far along it is in its life cycle. So this house had a lot of wear and tear. So if we were building our imaginary building, when it would be done, it would be perfect. But we're trying to find the value on the building that's there now. So we would have to subtract what wear and tear there is from our perfect imaginary building. Next is functional obsolescence. What's outdated or outmoded in the building? Well, 6.5 foot ceilings, insulation of straw, that's outdated or outmoded. And think about it, both physical deterioration, wear and tear, and functional obsolescence, outdated or outmoded, could be corrected if you chose to. You could raise the ceiling, or you could re-insulate, you could fix the roof. So are sources of accrued depreciation, physical deterioration, and functional obsolescence. And our third source of accrued depreciation is external obsolescence. That's a loss in value from an outside source that reduces the value of your building. So a little story, Governor Christie was governor and he had a problem with the New Jersey budget. And he noticed that there were 2 or 3 towns in New Jersey that didn't have police departments. What did they do? They called the state police whenever they had a problem. So Governor Christie said, from now on, we are not sending the state police to your town because you should be paying for your own darn police officers. That cost the people who lived in that town loss in the value of their houses. And that's not their fault. It's a loss in value from an external source. Just like that house in Washington Crossing Park, the external obsolescence was the fact that it was close to the Delaware River, which floods. That's a loss in value from an outside source. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to decide whether we're going to do replacement or reproduction. We're going to build our imaginary building. We're going to subtract our accrued depreciation, physical deterioration, functional obsolescence, external obsolescence. And then lastly, we add back in the value of the land. Now, why do we add back in the value of the land at the end? Because land does not depreciate. It doesn't wear out. So now the big question is, how do we find what our imaginary building is going to cost us to build? How do we find the value of the imaginary building? Once we find it, we subtract accrued depreciation. And then lastly, we add back in the value of the land. So how do we find what's the cost to build our imaginary structure? One way is the quantity survey method, also known as the stick by stick, brick by brick method, or the contractor's method. We look at every single piece of lumber, every single hour of labor, and add it together. Usually that gives you a pretty high number. The next is the unit in place method. Well, we look at how much a foundation costs. We add that to framing, how much that costs. We add that to rough plumbing, rough electric, roofing, etc., how much that costs. We add that all up, and then it comes up with what it's going to cost us to build our imaginary building. That's called the unit in place method. Or we could use the square foot method. And by the way, this set of slides was made in 2000. It's a long time ago now. $170 a square foot. We're up to $300 a square foot now. So we've had quite a bit of inflation. But you could use the square foot method. How much per square foot? How many square feet you have? Next, you could use the index method. Last year, it cost me $300,000 to build that house. This year, it's going to be 10% more, so it'll cost $330,000. So again, let's look at this. What do we do here again? Find the value of the improvement. So we find what the value is of our imaginary building. We look at our real building and we subtract accrued depreciation, wear and tear, functional obsolescence, and external obsolescence. And then we add back in the value of the land. And that gives us the value of the house where George Washington slept when he was crossing the Delaware River to surprise the Hessians on Christmas Day.
Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so you can get notified of what's new.